Yeah, hi. So it's just after Christmas, and I'm out going for a day walk in a patch of plantation forest out on the western side of Christchurch. What I'm doing is I've just sat down and I'm going to make myself some lunch. And I thought I'd go old school this time, and instead of using one of my normal cookers that I use, I thought I'd use an Esbit stove. And what this is it's like solid fuel tablets with a wee metal stove, and you light fire to the wee tablets, and then that basically heats up your food. This is just a cheap Kirkland's one that I bought at Hunting and Fishing. Other stoves like this that you might know far more common is Esbit. That's a really well-known German brand, well used in the United States and Europe. Yeah, and so what I'll do is what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cooking up some spaghetti with meatballs, a can of spaghetti with meatballs, and I'm going to be cooking it in my old Kip's canteen that I used when I was in the army, and I've also got my old army KFS set to use as well. So this is like going back to like in my army days. Yeah. Back in the 80s and early 90s when I was in the army, the cooking method that we mostly used were these solid fuel tablets, hexamine tablets with a metal cooker. That's what they supplied us with in the army. Most of us eventually went and bought ourselves like a gas canister stove because it's just so much more efficient. But there's one of the things that I always remember from those days was the smell on an early morning, cold early morning, of hexamine heating up your food when you were cooking your breakfast in the morning. And one of the smells that I most remember from that time is the smell of like spaghetti and sausages or spaghetti and meatballs, which we got in our ration packs, cooking up on a hexamine. So I thought I'd just like recreate that just to see what it's like. What I'm using for a cooking pot is your standard US Army issue, New Zealand Army issue in the 1980s Kip's canteen. Stainless steel, just has a folding handle that basically connects on the back here. And so you just hold on to the handle at the back. Most everybody's seen some kind of version of this, especially if you served in the military. Just about everybody had something like this. This is the one that I had when I was in the army. I had two of them. This one here, stainless steel, and so that one of the reasons I don't use it when I'm tramping is because it's bloody heavy. It probably weighs about 500 grams just by itself. But it's incredibly sturdy and hard wearing. I mean, that's maybe 50 years old now, and like, you know, it still looks in pretty good condition. So I'm going to cook up my meal in this, and then what I have to eat it with is a KFS kit that I had from army days. So that's a knife, fork and spoon. It interleaves into each other. And that's what I'm going to eat my meal with. In the army ration packs back in those days, we used to get powdered fruit drinks, and so to recreate that, because that's normally what you would have had in the morning, I've got this VitaFresh. This one's orange and mango, and so I'm going to mix this up in a bottle I have, and then I'll have that with my spaghetti once I've cooked it. What you would normally have done is you would normally have put your drink into your Kip's canteen, and you know, whatever you were going to have in the morning, coffee, tea, a fruit drink, and then you would have had like a square, rectangular square set of pots, aluminium pots that you cooked your meal in. And so you would have cooked your spaghetti up in that pot, and then you would have made your drink in your Kip's canteen, and then, you know, say you had the two things. But I don't have any of those old style rectangular cooking pots anymore, so I'll just use my Kip's canteen. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll set my gear up on the ground just over here. I've cleared a space on the forest floor, taken all the leaves and everything away so it's down to bare earth. And then I'll set up the solid fuel Esbit stove and just show it to you and explain it a wee bit, and then I'll just start cooking my lunch, and then we can just see where we go from there. So here's my cook system. I'll just open it up and show you what's inside. The ones we had in the army were almost exactly the same as this. They came in a waxed wooden box, and so what you basically had is the box was waxed, and then inside you had a metal cooker that you put your cups, canteen or your cooking pots on top of. And then if you open it up inside, this levers out like this, and then if you looked inside there were like fuel tablets, and so these fuel tablets here, they're round. The ones that we had when we were in the army were actually square, and so this solid fuel was hexamine, which is a type of petrochemical. What you basically do is you light these things, and then they'll burn, each of the cubes will burn for a couple of minutes, and that was normally enough to heat up a cup's canteen of water for a hot drink, or if you used 1.5 cubes, that was normally enough for heating up your canned food. Back when I was in the army back in the 1980s, the food that we had in our ration packs, it was canned food, so yeah, and then we only changed over to freeze-dried food like just before I got out of the army. Nowadays everybody uses retort pouches, because what you can do is you can stick a retort pouch in a flameless ration heater and heat it up, and then there's no like smoke or smell or anything that anybody can hear. Yeah, so I'll just set the stove up and then I'll come back and show you what you do with it from there. Right, so I've folded the oven out, and then you can put this either way, with the spikes up or with the spikes down. What we used to do is we used to put the spikes down, because then you can dig it into the ground. And then what you would do is you put a fuel tablet on the top here. You'd light a fuel tablet and put it on the top, and then what you do with your cups canteen is you just stick it over the top of the fuel tablet. Fuel tablet would like heat up the whatever it is you had in the pot. If you were cooking food in a pot, or if you were cooking some milky kind of drink in your cups canteen, you had to be real careful. You had to stir all the time, because like it would burn on the bottom of the thing really well. Yeah, so the tablets that came with that wee pack of these wee round ones, I don't think I'll use those. I think what I'll do is I've got a packet of Esbit cubes here, which are much more efficient, and they're open, so I think I'll open this up and use one of these. And so when you look at the Esbit cubes are squares, and they come in this wee pop open packet, and so what you basically do is you just pop it open to get your square out. And so there's your square of solid fuel, and then you basically light that and stick it on your cooker like so, and then as it was burning, then you put your cups canteen over the top, and you have a flame coming off of that cube heating your cups canteen or your pot that you were cooking your food in, and then basically, you know, just stirring as you go. So what I'll do is I'll light that cube, and then we can put the food in the pot and just start heating it up. Right, so I've got all my gear ready to go to heat up the spaghetti. So I've got the Esbit cube on the stove. I've opened the top of my can of spaghetti. Got my cups canteen ready. So you light you light your fuel tablets with either a lighter or a match. So the fuel tablets have wax on the outside, so what you're basically trying to do is set fire to the wax, and it melts off, and then you get to the petrochemical cubes on the inside. And so, you know, if you held the cube sideways and you lit it with the lighter, you could hold it until it started burning, and then you'd put it down. It's a bit harder to light these things with matches, but we'll give it a go. So the way to light them with matches is you need a couple of matches, you just can't use one. And so what you want to basically do is light your matches and then lay them down on top of the fuel tablet, and then hopefully that'll allow it to burn. Or the other thing you can do is put the matches under the fuel tablet through and try to light it from underneath the stove. But what we'll do is we'll try putting it on top first. And then you just have to wait for a minute until you can see that the fuel tablet's actually burning. Yep, so the fuel tablet's burning now. So what you want to do when you're cooking is you want to put a wee splash of water in your cup's canteen before you put your food in there, because if you just put your food in and stick it on, it'll start burning straight away. And then just open up your food, either with the can opener, or this can in particular has got a pop tier, and then you just drop it into the pot or cup's canteen that you're using to cook the meal with. Yeah, and then just give it a wee bit of a stir first before you stick it on, just to mix that water in, and then you just put your food over the top. And then what you need to do is you just need to keep stirring it every maybe 30 seconds, give it a wee stir. So I can hear the spaghetti starting to cook. You can hear a wee bit of a sizzle. So when the cubes are burning, it's not an unpleasant smell. It's kind of like a petrol, almost like a petrol smell. It's quite nice once the food that you're cooking starts warming up, because you get the smell of the cooking food, and also the cube itself like cooking underneath. Yeah, it's very nice. So you might be able to see there, it's just starting to bubble a wee bit, so you just have to give it a wee stir. So the fuel tablets, the reason why you use them in the military, because they're basically foolproof. Even if they're soaking wet, you can still light them, so you can always like have hot food or a hot brew. The disadvantage with them is that they're quite heavy. The stove itself is not that heavy, but the tablets themselves are quite heavy. Also they're very smoky, so you'll get a whole lot of like soot and smoke on the outside of your pot, which I'll show you after we're finished. You had to scrub your pots down after you're done your cooking, like on the outside and also on the inside. So, you know, like I used to carry two Steeler little green scratchy pads. One was for cleaning the outside and one was for cleaning the inside, because all the soot would come off the outside and get all over your green scratchy pad. And also solid fuel's a wee bit slower to cook than like a canister stove or like a pump up petrol stove. Sometimes, you know, it would take you 5 minutes to heat up like a cup's canteen of water to get it hot. Sometimes what would happen is you would start running out of fuel tablet underneath, and you'd have to slide another fuel tablet in there to keep it going. I think this will be fine with this one. So what I'll basically do is I'll just heat this up, and then once it's hot, I'll come back and just show you the hot meal. Yeah, so my food's basically heated up. You could never get things piping hot with these unless you use multiple cubes, and you wanted to save your cubes like in that army kind of experience, because it's, you know, you were never sure when you were going to get a resupply of them. They didn't come with the ration packs. You know, you were supposed to get a resupply of the cubes every 3 days, but it didn't always happen. So you always wanted to keep a few up your sleeve. So anyway, when your food's heated up and you've got it as hot as you want it, you just take it off, and then you can just leave the cubes to burn out if you want to, or the other thing is you can just put it on the ground and put it out with some sand, or put a wee bit of water over the top. That would stop it burning. If you'd only got through halfway through your cube like this, what we used to often do was put it out with a wee bit of water, and then what we would do is we would keep all those little pieces, and then, you know, you could use that for like 2 little bits for like heating up a pot of water for a cup of tea sometime. You know, you wanted to preserve as much of the stuff as you possibly could, just in case you needed it. I'll just let that burn out. So the other thing I have is I've got this Vitafresh, and I've got like a bottle here that I'm going to make it up in. We used to get these little sachets of like powdered fruit drinks. It wasn't anything as good as Vitafresh or Raro. It was this real cheap stuff that came in the ration packs. That was one of the things that we often used to replace with something else. You know, and you could have it whenever you wanted. I normally had mine with breakfast because I quite liked it with breakfast. Or a brew, if it was a cold morning, you'd have like a coffee with sweetened condensed milk that you got in the ration packs, like mixed into it. Yeah. So I'll just make this up. I'll put it in a bottle that I have here, and then we'll add some water and shake her up. So, you know, I've just got a small bottle here for putting the fruit juice into, just a drink bottle, and then you just basically fill it half up with water and shake it to dissolve the powder. Then you just shake it up to dissolve the powder, and then once the powder is properly dissolved, you would just like fill her up to the top with some more water. Yeah, and so there's my lunch, spaghetti with sausages and the orange drink. Yeah, and I'll just tuck into that now. Yeah, so just had my cups canteen with the food in it. That's bloody hot. That was one of the good things about these cup canteens, because it's stainless steel. They used to hold the heat really, really well. Once you got your water starting to boil, like, you know, it finished off really, really fast. And the food, like, you know, it's quite thick, so the food would stay warm in it. The mess tins that we had were made out of, like, aluminium, so like, they were light or lighter, but they didn't hold the heat as long, so like your food would get cold quite fast. Yeah, so there were two different types of ration packs you get in the army. There wasn't much of a difference between the contents between one and the other. One of the ration packs had spaghetti with sausages. One of the ration packs had baked beans with meatballs in it, or maybe it was the other way around. But the idea was you had canned food because that's what they supplied you with back then, and so you had those items for breakfast, and then for dinner or lunch they'd also give you like another can that had meat stew in it. There was one that was called meat and vegetables. Corned beef was another thing that we used to get, so like a small can of corned beef, and we'd heat it up with the Hexamine tablets, and then, you know, we'd add it to like 2-minute noodles, or you just eat it as it was. Or we had these wee army biscuits that were like savoury sweet biscuits. What you could do is you could take your corned beef and heat it up and then crush some of the biscuits into it. Yeah, so the thing I always liked the most was the spaghetti or the baked beans in the morning. They don't do that kind of stuff anymore. In the modern army ration packs, they have things like muesli or cereals, or they have retort pouches of like beans and sausages, or beans and meatballs. Yeah. I've got a picture of an old ration pack from the 1980s, so I'll just stick it up here so you can see what they look like. The picture's not fantastic because it's like a copy of a copy. But it gives you a bit of an idea of the items that were in there. Yeah, so you can see the ration packs that we had back then were like really basic things. They're much better nowadays. There's a much wider selection of food. They have retort pouches. They have things in them nowadays like noodles and things that we had to buy ourselves. The chocolates are better, the sweets are better that they have in them. They have muesli bars, and we didn't have muesli bars back then. Yeah, so I'll just eat my meal here, and then I'll show you what you do with your pans to try to clean them out. Just wash your meal down with your drink. Oh, that's super concentrated because it's actually for a litre, and that's only like a 400ml bottle. We used to do that sometimes though, because that's one of the things when you were out in the field, you really you didn't get enough sugar. You really had a craving for sugar all the time. So, you know, we do everything we could to increase the amount of sugar we had. You know, we take extra chocolate and sweets with us. We take extra drink packets. Yeah. Yeah, so what you had to do is you have to wait till these things cool down, because they get quite hot when you're cooking with those tablets. And then once it's cooled down enough, you know, you can fold it back down, clean it all off with a, if it's got residue on it, clean it off with a stick or your knife or whatever you might have there handy. And then, you know, once it's cool enough, you can stick your, once it's cool enough, you can stick your tablets back in there and close her up. And then what we always used to do is we always used to keep the wax box that it came in, and we'd put it in the wax box and carry it around in the wax box, because what would happen is all the soot would come off the outside of the cooker if you carried it around in your bag, and it would get all your stuff in your pack dirty. Yeah, so you know, you just carried it in the box, and then that was fine. And so you might be able to see the inside of the thing is a wee bit dirty. And so you got a couple of options for cleaning this. If water wasn't an issue, what you could do is you could just heat some water up in it. And we had Stilo pads that you use for cleaning the things out with. Obviously that was the best option, but you know, most times water was very limited. You only had the water that you were carrying, and sometimes you would find a water source where you could fill up, but normally you got like a water resupply once a day. Other ways you can clean these things out, you can get a big handful of like pine leaves, like is what I'll probably do here, and scour it out on the inside with some pine leaves, and then just put the smallest amount of water in the bottom just to clean the last bit of it. If you were at a beach where there was sand is really excellent. You'd fill her up with sand, let it sit for a minute or two for the sand to soak up all the stuff off the inside, and then give it a good scouring out. You know, you get in there with your hand in the sand and like turn it round, and then you do that 3 or 4 times, and it would clean the inside of the pot like it was brand new, like it'd be like scoured down till it was clean. What I'll do with this before I head off is I'll grab a big massive handful of pine leaves from under the trees here, and I will load them inside, and I'll just give it a bit of a scour around on the inside just to give it a bit of a clean. And then I've got a plastic bag to put this into, and I'll properly wash it when I get home, but that's just so I don't have stuff dripping into my bag when I'm walking. Yeah, and then obviously my area where I had the clean, where I was cooking, like I'll put all the leaves back onto that area so that I'm leaving no trace after I'm finished. Take all my rubbish with me, like all these little bits of plastic, the empty can, and all the rubbish from the drink sachet, that kind of thing. Yeah, and then I'll just leave this area as leave no trace and head off. You can see on the bottom of the Cups canteen, that's the residue you get from those solid fuel tablets. That's one of the reasons why they're not my favourite thing to use, because it's really hard to keep everything clean. You can wipe all that stuff off on the ground. You know, if you drag it across the ground, it'll take some of it off. You can like rub it with a handful of sand, that'll work as well. Give it a scrub down with a Stilo pad. Yeah, you have to keep cleaning that stuff off though, because it'll get all over your stuff otherwise. As I was saying in one of my previous things when I was talking about my Covia stove, that would have to be 2 of my oldest pieces of tramping gear. My KFS, my knife, fork and spoon from my army days, Cups canteen from when I was in the army. I've had those since 1987, because that was when I joined the army. Yeah, and so that's other old gear that I have. Yeah, so hopefully that was a wee bit interesting to you. So once again, I was just looking at solid fuel tablets as a source of heating and cooking. Obviously these things put off carbon monoxide, so if you're using them inside of a enclosed space, you have to have ventilation. You shouldn't be using them in a tent. You shouldn't probably be using them in a hut. You can use them in a hut if you stick a plate underneath your cooker before you start cooking, because what can happen is the heat will actually scorch like the table or the bench top that you're using underneath. So you need something non-flammable underneath to stop it from burning the hut down, because obviously you don't want to do that. Yeah. Another option for you, personally myself, I prefer canister stoves, and that's probably what I would use. Yeah, so just a look at using solid fuel tablets. You know, it's something you can try if you want to. Like I say, I prefer using a gas canister stove, but that's just me. You can buy these fuel tablets in most outdoor shops. Hunting and fishing sell those wee stoves. Bivouac, Macpac and Kathmandu all sell Esbit cubes. Torpedo 7, at least in Christchurch, sell Esbit cookers and also those Esbit tablets. So, you know, if you wanted to have a go at it, like, go into one of those shops and see what they have. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope this was interesting to you, and I'll see you on the next one.